Hey there, it's Leona. Welcome to Zen Mindfulness Shodo. Today we're gonna practice Shodo meditation while focusing on the Hiragana character for ki. So, let's begin our beautiful journey together. When you write a character, imagine a square about the size of the character that you are gonna write like this. First I'm gonna write it. Then I'm gonna explain the points and tips for writing the character beautifully in detail. Now, I'd like to provide an explanation. For the first stroke, you begin writing from a position slightly lower than the center point of the top left square. This line, as you can see, curves downward like this, and you write it moving upward to the right, gradually making it thicker until the middle vertical line is in the middle of the stroke. Once you finish the first stroke, you move the brush downward to the left like this. And then the second stroke begins from approximately directly below the starting point of the first stroke. The second stroke, like the first, curves downward in this manner, and you write it moving to the right at an angle that appears parallel to the upward angle of the first stroke, gradually making it thicker. The ending point should be slightly to the right of where the first stroke ended. Now, from the ending point of the second stroke, you move the brush upward to the left, like this. The third stroke begins from a point slightly to the upper right of the center point of the top left square. This line, to put it in extreme terms, curves to the lower left like this, at an angle of about 60 degrees, until the length of the part above the first stroke and the length of the part below the second stroke appear roughly equal. You write it moving downward to the right, gradually making it thicker as you go down. The ending point of this stroke will be around below the ending point of the second stroke, and shouldn't extend too far to the right of the second stroke's ending point. After pausing lightly here, you then flick upward, becoming gradually thinner, in the direction of where the fourth stroke will begin. After flicking, you bring the brush in the direction of the flick. The fourth stroke begins from approximately directly below the first and second strokes. This line, as you can see, curves downward, and you write it moving downward to the right, gradually making it thicker. The ending point should be slightly to the left of the rightmost point of the third stroke. Having some space here makes the overall balance of the character look better. Another guideline is that if the space above the starting point of the third stroke and the space below the ending point of the fourth stroke are roughly equal in width, the character ki will be positioned at the vertical center of the square box, making the overall character balance look good and beautiful. One key point when writing ki is that the first and second strokes should be roughly the same length. If I write examples here to make this clear, I'm writing extreme examples for clarity. In the left example, the second stroke is long compared to the first stroke's length, and in the right example, the second stroke is short compared to the first stroke. When the lengths are clearly different like this, you get a ki character with this kind of expression. This isn't wrong, so if you prefer this style of ki over the other form, you could practice writing it this way. Another point is when the angles of the first and second strokes don't appear parallel. For example, when you have a first stroke like this, and the second stroke is like this. Or when you have a first stroke like this, and the second stroke is like that. In the left example, the angle of the second stroke compared to the first stroke's angle causes them to gradually spread apart as they go right, so they're not parallel. In the right example, the upward angle of the second stroke is too strong compared to the first stroke's angle, so they gradually narrow as they go right. This also isn't parallel, so when it looks like this, compared to a key character, where the strokes appear roughly parallel. The overall character balance looks somewhat poor. Also, when writing the third stroke, there are times when there's a difference between the part above the first stroke and the part below the second stroke. For example, if I write an example, again, I'll write extreme examples for clarity. In the left example, the part above the first stroke is clearly longer than the part below the second stroke. And in the right example, the part below the second stroke appears longer than the part above the first stroke. Compared to the character key, where the protruding parts above and below appear roughly the same length, the overall expression of the character changes. In calligraphy exhibition, when intentionally changing the expression to show a more original style, you might deliberately change these lengths to alter the expression. So it would be good to change your writing style according to your purpose, or the calligraphy style you're aiming for. Also, when flicking on the third stroke, for example, when you have first and second strokes like this, and you flick on the third stroke, though I don't think many people do this, if you flick downward like this, you can't express the connecting feeling from the third to the fourth stroke. The natural form is to flick in the direction of the flick, and bring the brush in that direction to begin the fourth stroke. If you flick downward at the end of the third stroke like this, and the fourth stroke starting point is here, the position of the fourth stroke shifts, making the overall character balance look poor. The angle of the fourth stroke is also important. For example, when you have the first, second, and third strokes like this, if you write the fourth stroke too upright like this, compared to writing it at a slightly more horizontal angle, the latter makes this part more like a receiving tray, making the entire character appear more stable. However, if you write it almost parallel to the center horizontal line, making it nearly horizontal, this creates poor balance between the upper triangular part and the fourth stroke. So writing at an angle somewhere in between, not too upright, not too horizontal, will make the overall character balance look good. I've explained various points, but these writing points and techniques can be applied regardless of brush size or character size. Please refer to only the knowledge you find useful for writing a key character you're satisfied with. Keep these points and techniques in mind and try practicing. If you're interested, you can buy this on Amazon. See the link in the description. Alright, let's start practicing together. Before you start writing, take a deep breath and clear your mind. Slowly breathe in as much air as you can through your nose, and exhale all the negative emotions that you've been holding until this moment through your mouth. When you are mentally ready to write, you can start writing. Check the starting point, end point, the angle of the stroke, and the direction of the curve. After that, without hesitation, aim for the end point and move the brush smoothly. Try to write slower than you normally write, putting your heart and soul into each stroke. However, if you move the brush too slowly, the ink will bleed and the lines will become thicker in areas where you don't want them to be thicker. And if you move the brush too quickly, the ink will fade and the lines will become thinner in areas you don't want them to be thinner, or the ink will disappear midway through, making the strokes shorter than you want them to be. So concentrate on finding the right speed. Once you've finished writing the character, look at the character as a whole and think about what changes you should make next in order to make it look even more beautiful. Of course, you don't have to take all the tips and points that I've told you and copy my way of writing the character. Trust your own sense of beauty and adjust accordingly. It's important that you are satisfied with the shapes of the characters you write. So please use my tips and points as ideas and hints for adjusting the shape of the character to your sense of beauty. Of course, you can't change the shape so much that it no longer looks like a character. If you notice that you are thinking about something else while writing, immediately refocus on what you are writing. By repeating this exercise, you will be able to notice when your attention starts to turn to something unrelated to your current action, and gradually improve your concentration and self-control. You can also build your patience with this practice. So, let's practice together. It's just natural that we are unable to create perfectly satisfying strokes every time. Instead of blaming yourself for not being able to make strokes that you want, try praising yourself for taking on difficult challenges. On this channel, I not only share tips and points for writing Japanese characters beautifully with a brush and a pen in both English and Japanese, but also practice Zen Mindfulness Shodo meditation that focuses all of our attention on the present moment. If you thought that the information was useful and you want to learn tips and points for writing other characters neatly as well, or if you want to keep practicing Zen Mindfulness Shodo meditation with me, please subscribe to my channel and click the bell mark so you get a notification as soon as I upload a new video. You can find videos of other characters from the playlist. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up button. If you have any questions or comments, please write them in the comment section. Alright, let's learn and practice together again in my next video. Thank you for watching.